Can you rescue the astronauts?
Yes, we're bringing them back in a few weeks.
And get them back?
We're going to get them back.
God bless.
Thank you.
Everyone's attacking you for your position. What are you doing in the government? There was a cyber attack on X today, which shut it down and may have been foreign sourced.
Yes.
It's a big story. You want to give us a moment on that?
Well, we're not sure exactly what happened, but there was a massive cyber attack to try to bring down the X system with IP addresses originating in the Ukraine area.
Your stock is way down. You've been criticized left and right.
But look on the bright side.
I mean, why are you doing this?
Always look on the bright side of life. But I think we're doing the right thing here. There's been a tremendous amount of waste and fraud in the government. There have been many audits that have pointed out that there's a tremendous amount of waste and fraud in the government. All we're trying to do is get that number down to a much smaller figure, save money for the American taxpayer, stop money being spent on things that I think very few taxpayers would agree make sense. Government-funded, non-governmental organizations. This is a gigantic fraud loophole where the government can give money to an NGO, and then there are no controls over that NGO. So they've given billions of dollars, in fact, we estimate tens of billions of dollars to NGOs that are essentially scams. People criticize, say, what DOGE is doing. We say, well, which part specifically? Because we put all of the actions of the DOGE team on the doge.gov website and on the DOGE handle on X. So we post the receipts. So it's like, this action has been taken, this action has been taken. So when we get criticism, we say, like, of what? Which line do you disagree with? Like which cost saving do you disagree with? And then people usually can't think of any.
No.
So
it's transparent line by line.
It's transparent line by line,
which is quite remarkable.
What we're adding here is caring and competence. But the president is the elected representative of the people. And if the president cannot get things implemented as a reflection of the will of the people, then what we have is not a democracy, we have a bureaucracy. We have rule of the bureau, not rule of the people. Where you'll see the biggest outcry is from the Democrats who are, they don't want the waste and fraud to be turned off because it is a gigantic magnet to attract illegal immigrants and have them stay in the country. If we turn off this gigantic money magnet for illegal immigrants, then they will leave. You see some of the crazy stuff, like where money from FEMA, which is meant, FEMA is an agency that's meant to take care of Americans in distress. And a bunch of their money was being sent to pay for luxury hotels in New York for illegal immigrants. Why was that being done? It was because the Democrats are trying to import voters, basically.
Yes.
ICE is a law enforcement entity. And I don't know why we all of a sudden believe, because of our political beliefs, that we are to ignore a law enforcement entity. I'm not. I'm not going to ignore any law enforcement entity that's going to help me take dangerous people off the streets. We don't deal with civil enforcement. It's clear the law say we can't. But in the areas that I could partner and coordinate with ICE, I'm going to do so.
Strike Force was the name given to the mayor's leadership group that was dealing with Denver's immigration crisis, a crisis that attracted the attention of this conservative legal group affiliated with the Trump administration, which sent this harshly worded letter to Johnston in late December, demanding information and internal communications on how city officials were responding to immigration issues.
My family's from Mexico. I was born in Compton. I'm all for La Raza, Mexico. I would love to live in Mexico, but this is Mexico, so.
We built America. A lot of our farm workers are immigrants.
Trump es un pendejo. You guys might hear these phrases once a month or maybe once a year, but here in Boyle Heights, you hear that shit every day. The organizers of a big-ass rally to protest mass deportation, ICE raids, Trump's new executive orders, and so forth. We're gonna go talk to La Gente that organized this event and figure out ¿Qué onda? ¿Qué pasa? What the heck is going on?
ICE is terrorizing our communities, and they're trying to manufacture consent for a war with Mexico.
And these raids are not hyper-targeting criminals, they're hyper-targeting tax-paying community members. And right now, with all the people not working because they're scared to get deported.
There's a lot of people that don't want to come out. They're scared to come out.
The role of a woman in Almonte who was violently arrested and detained by ICE in broad daylight. Her daughter has cancer, and she's undergoing chemo right now. They're being ripped apart from the rest of their family and their communities.
We're being told rhetoric that the idea is going to be that we'll create more jobs for Americans if we take away the jobs of immigrants. But these jobs are open to Americans. The immigrants are often the people that are taking low-paying jobs that are being exploited for things that Americans don't want to do. And the issue of job availability is not due to the immigrant community. Ironic that this billionaire agenda is wanting to deport immigrants when they're part of the reason for their success, the exploitation of the working class, especially immigrants.
Right, so for as long as I can remember, immigrant labor has seen as quote unquote unskilled labor, which doesn't exist, right? All labor is skilled. And because of that notion, right, that the people picking our fruit, the folks cleaning up our hotel room, the people literally cleaning up debris, are immigrant workers, there's this notion that their labor is unskilled, therefore should be underpaid.
It's easy to criminalize people without taking responsibility for why we have immigration and immigrants in the first place, which is due to U.S. intervention and us intervening in the global south and forcing people to leave. People don't choose to come here lightly. They are forced to.
How do you feel about the designation of cartels as terrorist organizations?
I would say that when it comes to cartels, even that alone and those questions, it's shifting the narrative to that the immigrant community that are coming to the United States are all cartel-based or are all dangerous. I think that when we're fighting for improved immigration reform and to create paths to citizenship, that the discussion has to be separate from identifying to manage the infiltration of crime within our country. We have to look at who is applying for citizenship, complete thorough background check, getting to the commerce in society. And as far as border control and trying to control the infiltration of crime, I don't think that anybody is shutting down that discussion or wants the infiltration of illegal drugs.
Here's the thing. If there was a safer way, a more humane way, and a way that abided by international human laws for immigrants to cross, for asylum seekers to cross, there would be no need for the cartel to do that.
This country has fucked up the rest of the world and destroyed people's homelands and forced millions of people from the Congo to Latin America to flee their homelands and seek refuge in places like the U.S. And then they turn around and call them criminals and demonize immigrants.
We not cross the border cross us.
We want to support and protect immigrants right now that are literally stuck at the border, right? Because we've been cutting back our asylum system so much. We need to make the process more humane. So the last time we had immigration reform policy was under Reagan, and it was a blanket amnesty. Reagan granted amnesty to immigrants, right? And what it said is like, okay, if you've been here XYZ this long, here's the process to become a citizen, right? We're going to grant you amnesty. There hasn't been a policy change like that in the immigration law since then, right? And you mentioned asylum, right? The current asylum process is extremely difficult. And unfortunately, for most families that do file their asylum claim, they will be denied. And these are folks who are literally fleeing persecution, fleeing war, And I think that's why it's important for anyone who supports immigrants and also immigrants ourselves is that no matter who's in office, we need to continue to fight for our rights.
Donald Trump's Homeland Security Secretary calls you a terrorist sympathizer.
Well, I'm not a terrorist sympathizer.
Srinivasan is caught up in the political reckoning over this protest last year. As the Israel-Hamas war raged, Columbia University became the focal point of pro-Palestinian action. It enraged many, Trump included. He vowed a crackdown, including on international students who protested. Srinivasan says she was never a protester, but found herself caught in Trump's dragnet. Forced to flee, crossing the border into Canada, she still fears for her safety.
My visa had been revoked. After a lot of pushing, they kind of yell in the corridor saying, "We want Ranjani Srinivasan, your visa has been revoked. We want to put you in removal proceedings."
The Indian citizen found herself de-enrolled as a student by the university.
You're going to be under arrest. So turn around, turn around, turn around, turn around, turn around.
Okay, let's not. Okay, he's not resisting. He's giving me his phone. Okay, he's not. I understand. He's not resisting.
Put your arm
Like,
there's no use for this. Don't worry about it. You're going to have to come with us. Don't worry. I'm coming with you. No worries.
The officials reportedly claimed that Khalil's undisclosed job at UNRWA is grounds for deportation under U.S. immigration law. UN agency known as UNRWA provides food and health care to Palestinian refugees and has become a flashpoint in the Israeli war in Gaza.
The city, this Pakistani-owned 4-star hotel became the epicenter. FEMA has spent hundreds of millions of your tax dollars keeping this place running. This hotel was getting foreclosed, and the government, i.e. your money, bailed this failing hotel out by placing illegal immigrants in rooms. Even in New York's most liberal areas, residents protest these shelters because of the rising crime and deteriorating conditions in their neighborhood.
So you had your baby while you were living in the shelter?
Sí.
All week. Her kid is coming home from school, and so are thousands of other migrant children. That created a very interesting problem for New York City public schools. Now, I believe that crime from illegal immigrants should have never been a political thing. It's beyond infuriating that our tax dollars went to fund gang violence. That even the people who are here illegally want criminal migrants deported. Yet Democrats vote overwhelmingly against deporting violent criminals. AOC has actually campaigned to abolish ICE, and according to polling, she's the most influential Democrat. New York City signed a 3-year, $220 million contract with the hotel's owner, Pakistan International Airlines, to turn its 1,025 rooms into a migrant shelter and intake center. I don't see anything like those numbers. The bleeding has stopped, the border has closed, but the question now is, how do you approach the crisis with the people already here?
So this is, I think for most people, this is a very simple issue.
Sure.
If you are here, legally or illegally, you're here as on a visa or whatever, and you're participating in these things, you're not going to integrate into our country.
Well, look, you're a guest, and this is a very important conversation to have, which we've tended not to have because we haven't had to. But being in this country, as a visitor, it's a privilege. So if you need a visa because you're working here, which is great, and we accommodate that, and there's worker visas. If you're visiting and you need a visa because you're going to school, or even some who might need one for being a tourist, is you go through a process and we ask you questions about what are you going to do here? What is your intention? What are you trying to accomplish? And Secretary Rubio has made it very clear that if you were to say all the things that certain people have done, let's say on the campuses, when you are trying to get your visa, like, oh, look, I support Hamas, I'm going to encourage Jew hatred, I'm going to take over buildings, I love graffiti, we're going to do that, we're going to stop instruction, we would not issue you that visa. So it's a reminder that when you are here, whether it's a visa or a green card, that those are things that are reliant on the nature of what you're doing and what you have told us. And if you are doing, as you saw with that tweet, and I would recommend everybody look up Secretary Rubio's Twitter, X accounts, I should say, I still call it Twitter, and follow him, because he's made it very clear. This is not a birthright. A green card is not a birthright. A visa can be taken. Now, if that happens, there's also, let's say your job ends and you don't have that job that you had that work visa for, and you're afraid to go back to your own country, your home country, you can apply for asylum. We have so many different mechanisms, but it's clear that if you do things that disrupt the nature of what's important for the United States, if you do things that are dangerous, if you're breaking the law, if you're a criminal, you are not welcomed in this country. You will not be allowed in the country. And if you are already here, you will, at DHS, in that particular instance, you will be removed from the country. And I think that's important for Americans to remember.
Yeah, and it's a reminder, and this should not be a radical concept, but the idea that our immigration system is designed to benefit America as opposed to being a dumping ground or a solution to other countries' problems.
Yeah, yes, look, it's for us, this is really about, just like every other sovereign nation, we have a right to decide who comes into our country. And that's what our passport system is about. It's about, for Americans, about coming and going. Other countries have their rules. And when you want to come in here, obviously, we love people around the world. This nation is the result of people wanting a better life. And it continues to be. But what we don't want is to be taken advantage of in that regard. And if you've lied to us coming into the country, or if you begin to do things that are against America's interests, that are criminal in nature, we're going to take action. Over the last few years, that has not been apparent. There seems to have been no law and order or no rules. But the rules are back, and they're very basic. And it's so that the American people have a bit more sensibility of what their lives are going to look like at the end of the day, to have more safety. This is about safety, security, and prosperity. That's what we owe the American people. And when America is stronger, the rest of the world does better.
Amen.
You know, my husband was taken away from me in the middle of the night. It was one of the most terrifying times of my life. I don't think I've ever experienced anything scarier than that.
The unrest began in the fall of 2023, following the October 7th Hamas terror attack on Israel. When Israel retaliated with deadly bombings in Gaza, students across the country erupted in protest. At Columbia University in New York, demonstrations against the war, while mostly peaceful, also led to the occupation and vandalizing of buildings, and what many Jewish students described as a threatening anti-Semitic atmosphere on campus. A Palestinian born in Syria became the lead negotiator between protesters and the university.
This encampment is a minor inconvenience compared to the generational shaping events taking place now in Gaza.
People really trusted him to be good in that role because he's so calm and good under pressure.
Instead, Khalil's been arrested and detained under the Immigration Act that allows the Secretary of State to deport any person whose presence or activities would, quote, have potentially serious adverse foreign policy consequences for the U.S. He believes the true reason that Khalil and other students are being targeted is because of their polarizing viewpoints.
Freedom of expression is hard. It requires listening to, tolerating, and even defending views that you or I might find completely repugnant, that make our blood boil. But the alternative is so much more dangerous.
The students were violently attacked by public safety without any warnings.
But Khalil is the face of campus protests. He's been accused of helping to create an environment of anti-Semitism. I think to a lot of Americans, why shouldn't he be deported?
If the government establishes that he is a leader or a representative of a terrorist organization or advances or espouses their cause, that is grounds for stripping him of his green card and removing him.
This case is not about speech, but what he says are illegal actions.
Nobody is being prosecuted for their speech. It's not that American citizens can speak freely, but non-citizens can't. That's not the issue. But with these immigration regulations, if you are a supporter of, if you're organizing together with others to conspiring to do certain things, those are actions. And it's those actions that put you askance of the immigration law.